If you have ever practiced astrology, or if you're currently practicing astrology, you can't argue with me when I say it's a cycle and it perpetuates you through cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle, and it is exhausting. Astrology is exhausting. It is narcissistic and it's distracting. It is the epitome of the hamster wheel that I always talk about with New Age, which New Age, by the way, is just an umbrella term for all occult practices. Okay? All of them. But yeah, it's the hamster wheel of them all. It's the hamster wheel of them all.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I personally believe that this woman means no ill. I don't think she's out here trying to demonize people and to really act like she is holier than thou. I think we are seeing someone who is very heartfelt into their passionate beliefs, using their philosophy to make sense of their reality. And I actually commend that. I actually can resonate with certain, a certain intention that she's going into this with, and certain things that she's saying. Regardless, I'm going to proceed to explain how everything that she mentioned in that video was utter nonsense. Now, when I say utter nonsense, I really do mean utter nonsense. I will deconstruct how nothing that she said was actually based on any reality and is really just a subtle exposition of weaving in false ethos and then hitting you with pathos. When she tells you that she used to be an astrologer, if you actually don't think critically, you'll think, well, obviously she's had the experience of doing this, so obviously she knows what she's talking about. However, I already exposed in my last video featuring her how she does not even have a proper understanding of what the zodiac is. So if you listen to that video, she is telling you astrology is this, astrology is that, when really all astrology is the calculation of the path of the sun's ecliptic on the zodiac through it and its place in the world. It is literally space meteorology. She is fundamentally telling you that practicing math is demonic, and we're going to get into that later. The reason why it's important to put context to very misleading ethos like this is, if I wanted to be a lawyer right now, I can't just decide that I'm a lawyer. I need to take a bar exam. If I wanted to be a doctor, I could pull a Dr. Love. I mean, there was somebody who got sued for representing people in law, and he won every case, but he did not have the proper license. And if I do not have a license to practice medicine, I'm going to jail. This is not the case with astrology, where everyone can just pick up and practice this and decide that they're a master astrologer. And that's what the purpose of this series is for. If you cannot tell me the significance of the zodiac and how it influences real tropical seasonal influences real time, then yeah, you can know what signs mean and certain planets mean, but now you'll start to spread very misleading disinformation and start to convince people that the practice of just equating symbols to archetypes is demonic. Okay, the first thing to establish straight off the bat is everything she told you, just like the entire narrative, that what she is telling you is basically a regurgitation of centuries worth of indoctrination. It's all a straw man. A straw man fallacy is the informal fallacy of refuting an argument different from the one actually under discussion, while not recognizing or acknowledging the distinction. This straw man is built off of many components, but two major ones we're going to highlight, other than the obvious red herrings, are, of course, for our first offense, a false equivalence. A false equivalency is an informal fallacy in which an equivalence is drawn between two subjects based on a flawed or false reasoning. This is categorized as a fallacy of inconsistency. What is inconsistent about what she said? Well, if you practice astrology, we need to make sure that we're clear. What it means to practice astrology is that every time there's a cycle, every time there's a new moon or a full moon, you are logging, hey, the full moon happened in this zodiac sign at this degree at this time. Now, on the other hand, you do have people who take astrology signs and pretend that they can just know you because they know what day you are. You have people who are attached to these cycles in unhealthy ways that, personally can now have you exhibit unhealthy behavior because of your misunderstanding of these principles. She is attempting to equivocate the natural practice of just knowing the space time with the negative consequence of no education on this field at all and how people are making stuff up as they. And so this false equivalence gives way to a hasty generalization, an informal fallacy wherein a conclusion is drawn about all or many instances of a phenomenon on the basis of one or a few instances of that phenomenon. All right, listen very clearly. Basically, if you practice astrology, you are being put under the umbrella of other people who abuse these principles and practices. Really listen to what she said, because that's the point that she's hammering home. The misleading part of this is most people have not studied this. I'm 10 years in the game. I've read over thousands of people's charts. Like, I have experience noticing these nuances. We learn new stuff every day. We don't have research institutions like other accredited fields that can enhance a lot of what's happening. So this allows all sorts of BS to just kind of interfere in people's lives. The nature of this generalization and equivocation is no different than going to a medical doctor and saying, hey, you shouldn't practice medicine because doctors scam patients, doctors kill patients, and they're doctors who don't even know what they're doing with their patients. Now, all those things are seemingly true. You do have a lot of doctors who are responsible for negligence in their patients' deaths and are outright scamming their patients. However, you would not dismiss the entire practice of medicine because you have people who are not upholding the proper principles of that field. In fact, the doctor would look at you wild crazy, like, what? And so bringing up that astrology is a cycle of this and that perpetuates people to do this and that is nothing more than a cheap, veiled attempt to equivocate falsely one reality with another person's philosophy. Because all astrology is, ladies and gentlemen, is the language between the sun's ecliptic path and the Earth's celestial equator through the zodiac. It's space meteorology. See, I have nothing against this woman. You guys may not have realized this has happened before. Doreen Virtue did this years ago, and you're going to continue to see this disillusionment with illusions because, yes, people are vulnerable, they're human, and so it's easy for us to make these mistakes. Even myself, I have to catch myself on fallacies I commit every day. The problem with these fallacies is they hook you in with this pathos, and if you're stupid, I'm gonna just be honest, if you're dumb and you believe all that stuff, you're going to think, wow, they're really saying something, when all they're doing is begging the question. All these Bible verses that they quote is nothing more than trying to circle the argument and say that the basis of their argument is because it was written in that book. Mind you, I'm actually Christian. So in conclusion, what these people are trying to tell you, because she spoke on New Age principles and them being deceptive, and that's the truth. However, what these Christians are trying to tell you, okay, is that you need to put God first, whether you believe in God or not. They incorrectly try and demonize you for maybe using and reading tarot and reading astrology. And it shows because they can't even say anything logically sound. That's because they don't know what they're saying. However, the crux of what they're trying to say is when you put God first instead of these worldly tools, that enables you to open up to instruction from the Holy Spirit. So it's not about, are you doing this or are you doing that? Are you putting God first in everything that you do? Because it's not all these people criticizing that will judge you when you die. It's some of you are put on this path by God to do what you're doing. And you shouldn't let anybody else who especially hits you with fallacious logic to demonize you for what you're doing. And we need to stop demonizing math. I don't like it. I get it. But it's not that evil, guys. It's not